Classic Harrison Price for Monday, January 6, 2025. Coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee here at the historic Wall Center. In this show, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today, bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Sakaris alongside Blake Price. Kind of a grumpy Blake Price today. Mike Rogerson hitting switches and conducting things. How are you? How was your weekend? Does someone have a case of the Mondays?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I'm fabulous.
All right.
Fabulous. People know what that means coming up in a little bit. No, I had maybe my most sedate weekend in recent memory.
This is the weekend of sedation. For years and years and years, Hockey Night in Canada's largest Saturday night rating has been the first January after all the holidays because people are out of money.
We're exhausted.
They're exhausted, and they just want to kick back and watch some hockey. Pity, actually, the Canucks didn't play on Saturday.
That being said, I had zero appetite to have a beer while I was watching the game.
Ditto. I was done drinking. I tried to have a beer on Friday. I went, no. Just going to put them aside.
Carbonated water was about as adventurous as I got. Yeah.
I did absolutely nothing this weekend.
Same.
I watched the Canucks on Friday night. I watched the World Juniors and the NFL on Saturday. Some college football, I guess, in there as well. And then I watched the NFL and the World Juniors on Sunday.
I cleaned the kitchen and I felt like I had solved world peace.
Right.
I was like, that is a lot.
Took out the trash and recycling. Yeah. That was about as far as I ventured.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. It was the cat's birthday. We went to the pet store and bought them catnip pillows. That's how exciting my weekend was.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Happy birthday, Barney, Milo. Okay.
Are Barney and Milo getting along?
Better than you and I.
And the Canucks.
Yeah, they get along pretty good, actually. They're quite a team. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they put up a united front, and we have to deal with all their antics.
No trade demands?
Well, one of them found his way into the Christmas tree on Saturday and just bedded down. He was there like 3/4 of the way up the Christmas tree, just bedded down, camouflaged, not a peep. Carmen looked up and went, "There's a cat in the tree." And the other one's just looking around like, "Wasn't me."
That doesn't sound like a cat ready to wave its no-move clause.
No.
It's a nester.
Indeed.
Yes.
Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What do you think happens with Elias Pettersson and JT Miller? This inspired by Elliot Friedman on Saturday. Something might happen. Nothing might happen. Three paths. Nothing. One is traded. Both are traded. You can vote at the Sakaris and Price X and YouTube channels. I voted one is traded. And then our old friend Grady Sass got in my mentions like, that's not enough. You got to say when. Okay. If it's Miller by the deadline, if it's Pettersson in the offseason. But I think one is going to be traded. And look, is there a case for nothing? Sure. But let's remember, everybody, it's not like this flared up out of nowhere, got hot, got combustible. We're going to bridge the gap and everything's going to be tickety-boo going forward. No, this has been a thing for some time. It went quiet. It went dormant for a little bit.
But the volcano eventually came alive.
No, that's it. It's like these two just don't get along. They just don't see eye to eye. And now it's affecting the play of both and the Vancouver Canucks.
I read the question.
I think something has to happen. I think Alvina and Rutherford are at the point where they know that.
I read the question as this season, and so I said nothing because I think ultimately they're realizing we are far better off this season trying to get in the playoffs, win the playoffs by recouping what we have here than trying to win any sort of trade and
Blake,
down the road.
You made the argument they're better off, period, if the two of them can coexist.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people have said, like, boy, if you're moving one of these guys, Jeff said it on Friday when we talked to him, where are you at center ice?
And both of these players, when they are on, you have very little to criticize about each of these players when they are going.
They're nice yin and yang.
Yeah.
You wish one was right-handed, but whatever. Small quibbles.
Yeah.
Lease month at Surrey Mitsubishi. Leasing a car, better option, lower monthly payment, flexibility to drive a new vehicle every few years. You don't have the depreciation hit, the long-term commitment, the minimal maintenance cost. This month at Surrey Mitsubishi, you can lease the Outlander PHEV 2024. Driving that, what a magnificent vehicle. And today, I don't know about the North Shore, but I was frozen over this morning. It's almost like freezing rain came overnight or something.
Yeah, the seal on the doors, you opened it up.
The seal, that's it.
Yeah. Crack in the ice.
And so I full scale heater, defrost, the steering wheel heater, marvelous.
Pretty nice.
$182 a week on lease for this vehicle. If you want the gas option, it goes at $105 a week. The Eclipse Cross, just $100 a week. The RVR, only $87 a week. And we've been telling you, don't miss out on the $5,000 government rebate on the Outlander PHEV while it lasts. You may have a few months on that, we came to learn today from the nation's capital. All leases are OAC. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820, 104th Avenue in Surrey, or online at surreymitsubishi.ca. Let's get to our top story. Brought to you by Yale Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Elias Pettersson speaks, and the Canucks are prioritizing a center if one of them has to be traded. Pettersson today speaking with Sportsnet's Ian McIntyre, I guess yesterday in Montreal, where the Canucks are facing the Canadians. But the report on the weekend from Elliotte Friedman that they are prioritizing a center, that yes, they have a need on defense, that yes, they understand that if they're going to be everything they need to be or want to be, hope to be, that another defenseman is critical to the equation here. But if you're moving out a top two center, you're needing a top two center back. And what that does is that winnows, that narrows the field of potential trade partners here.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're talking about two deals simultaneously, that one's for a center, one's for a D. I mean, who knows how it could. The point is, they don't want to be down a center from where they are right now. So, however it unravels,
yeah, and that's the proper move. That is the conventional wisdom, but it's the correct strategy, if you ask me. You do want to keep this window open. You're not in rebuild mode. You don't really want to be in recast mode, but they may force it upon you. And if that's the case, then you want a stout center iceman to play in either the one hole or the two hole, depending on who moves.
But hey, if it's one of these two star players plus one of Lekkerimaki or Wielander, maybe you have your cake and eat it too. Maybe both itches get scratched at the same time if you choose to go down that road.
That's a very big deal, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Pettersson telling IMAC it will all go away if he plays better and the team starts winning. He reaffirms, I guess, that he wants to be here, saying that's why he signed here. Pettersson, quote, "I know I can do better. I will be the first one to say it. And I never think things get easier." So this is, quote unquote, facing the music, as Patrick Alvin would say. I mean, it's done very carefully, diligently with a one-on-one with a Rogers reporter on the road.
Yes. But it's still way better than the defiance we saw from both him and Miller for 2 weeks ago.
For sure. A little bit more of a reality check from Elias Pettersson here.
Yeah.
Quote, "I haven't had the start that I wanted to. At the end of the day, I have expectations from the club, and obviously I haven't met them yet. But I mean, it doesn't matter what people say. I know what I can do, and that's what I'm focusing on doing." And then as for the trade discussion, Pettersson says, "I'm aware of it. I've heard it." But then it's like, can I control it? No. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying not to think about it, but I'm sure it will go away if I play better and if we win.
Well, both in terms of actuality and certainly in terms of public sentiment, and I'm sure they've thought about it, but they haven't been able to execute on this, is that if either one of these two players starts to actually play well, the swing of public sentiment into keeping that player versus the other is going to be monumental. What has confused the issue a little bit here is that both of them are playing so poorly that people are kind of losing their faith and patience with both of these players. If one of them can step up to the plate and say, nope, I'm going to get my game back here, and just wills it to be, I'll be interested to watch how this whole story unfolds differently.
A whole province's adoration and adulation is right there for the
right
taking,
there.
Elias.
Right
JT,
there. Yes.
one of you, step into the breach.
Not likely to be tonight for Pettersson. I still think there's a non-zero chance he plays, but most likely it'll be this week.
So far, no trade request from either player, at least not one that the insiders have been able to suss out. You do wonder whether one is coming if this continues, because so the way players think, for the most part, and I know they will pay lip service, and you heard what you heard there from Elias, but more often than not, professional athletes have outsized opinions of themselves, have a whole lot of confidence, and so when things aren't going well, some will look in the mirror, take responsibility, accountability, and say, I've got to be better. They'll certainly tell you all that. But oftentimes it's, I'm aggrieved. I don't have my wingers. I don't have this. The organization, the defenseman can't get me the puck. So you do wonder whether one of them is forthcoming. We saw how angry Elias was a week or so ago at the questions about JT. You do wonder whether that is something that could push him to wanting out. And we also see how disengaged, how dispassionate JT Miller is right now. And that is quite alarming, given that more often than not, just about every night or most nights over the last few years for the Vancouver Canucks, you could count on an emotionally raw, engaged JT Miller leading the fight, right? That's been
the social
as big
media,
as the Elias Pettersson concerns are, and there are many, including I think he just has to get stronger to be that first-line center in the NHL, and I'm not sure you can do that in season. But of all the concerns I have in Pettersson, to me, the bigger concern is the way JT looks right now, because he looks pre-Tocchet. He looks like the guy blowing zones and going for shift changes and just not having the head in the game and playing all 200 feet like we saw for the last couple of years when he was just a marvelous frontline NHL player.
Well, first of all, for Pettersson, for whatever criticisms you might have of the player, just in general, not even this season included, the guy's got proof of concept multiple seasons that he can get 90 to 100 points in this league as he is currently built. So you might want him to be stronger, but he's also proven he can do it in the current format, if you will, of his body. But yeah, on JT, yeah, we're going to look back at that absence, Matt, and wonder if there's something additional to the current drama.
Well,
is that haunting him again? Because the social media reviews of his game, as you just checked into Twitter, if you will, during the Friday game, people were just like, "What is he doing?
What is this?" Yeah,
this is a shell of a human playing out there. Where is JT Miller? So who knows what's going on?
Well, look, when he took that 10-game leave of absence, and some of it was of physical ailments, not all of it, as we know.
It's a cocktail of issues, yes.
Right. Whether it's a neck, back, shoulder, there was something that was bothering him there. Of that, there is no doubt. And so, did it get wholly better over the 10-game absence and however many games he has played since then? Probably not 100%, right?
No,
most pro athletes midway through a season are dealing with something. On Friday's program, we talked with Jeff Merrick, and he mentioned that he mentioned that former Canucks president and general manager Brian Burke was joining his show. And we said, well, you got to ask him about this business. And he said, oh, yes, absolutely. It's top of list. So we want to play a couple of clips here of what Brian Burke had to say about the matter and how he would go about resolving it. But the first clip is with regards to the fact that this got so public. Let's take a listen.
To me, the shocking part of this is not that there's discord or friction. The shocking part of this is that it's this public. This is wrong. This is not stuff that's supposed to be aired publicly. This has gone too far. The people involved, the coaches tried to calm this down. The GMs tried to calm this down. Jimmy Rutherford's tried to calm this down. It's still out there. It's gone too far. I blame the players involved for letting it get this far. But this is not anything unusual. This is routine for hockey clubs. What is not routine is how the broadcasting of it has been.
And I can understand that. Brian said earlier in that clip, and I think it goes with just about any workplace where you have enough people, is that you're going to have people who don't get along personally, who don't see eye to eye, and yet they have to set those things aside and pull on the rope together. And I think that's been the disappointing part for all involved here. So that it is public. Merrick asked Burke about that, and here's what Brian had to say.
I think that's clearly, you're talking about very impatient people. Jimmy Rutherford's an impatient guy. That's why he's successful. He would have called them in and said, you got to fix this, solve it. He would have called both players in. I would have called the players in separately and say, I'm not trading anyone. You two sort this out. I would have had them in separately. And when I brought them in together and say, you want to grab a case of beer somewhere and go drink beer and solve it? Do it that way. You want to fight? You want to go out after practice and fight? Solve it that way. But solve it. Fix it. I'm sick of hearing about it. And then Patrick Allvin would have done the same thing. Jimmy would have done the same thing. It's not working. So now the best thing is to let it shame them into making it work and see if you can move on. The good thing is teams have distractions too. A fight will happen where players rally around the team. Something will happen that'll get the team to rally around them and forget about this. But right now, it's a major problem.
So Burke does think it's intentional that the Canucks at wits' end, not knowing where to go to solve all this. Basically, Patrick Allvin comes out and says what he says about Elias Pettersson, and there you go. Now it's front and center. It is right in your wheelhouse, both of you.
I think I said this before Christmas. If you're one of those two players, I think you're probably pretty embarrassed that this is all coming out.
I think you are now.
You're being...
Especially Elias, because Elias is a JT, I think he understands when you're that emotional, when you're that irascible, when you're that profane, when you're that everything that he is, that this comes with the territory. But I can only imagine Elias getting notes, from friends in Sweden going what am I reading about all this?
But I think Brian Burke's got a very good read on what likely happened. Again, he's not reporting what happened. He's saying this is how I'm imagining it. And I think that's the way a lot of us did, is that, the management wouldn't have taken this sitting down. They would have put forth some effort to remedy the situation, if not a great effort to remedy the situation, and has clearly come to no conclusion. So eventually, is there some... I don't know if it's fully conscious, Matt, of we're going to shame these guys into it, but I think you get to the point where you're so upset that you probably blurt out to somebody, we've tried everything and it's just not working.
Well, hey, Rick Tocchet, why don't you ask for these guys? Why don't you ask for request them?
Yeah.
Tocchet was sitting there asking for it. Yeah, I've got a lot of, I don't know if sympathy is the right word, but I find myself, the more I think about this matter, the more I find, because look, you could argue that I think there was a time where you could argue this is a failure of leadership. Get these two guys on the same page. I think the breadcrumbs that have been dropped since suggest leadership has done everything in their power here. Rutherford, Allvin, Tocchet, Hughes. And despite their best efforts, it still ain't right. And so who's that on? That's on the two principals. And I can understand if those four gentlemen in this professional environment are just appalled that it continues, despite their efforts. And now, as we say, to the detriment of the team.
And yet there's still people like 7-6 in the chat who say, I think they play bad for unrelated reasons. And it's not the only reason.
No, that's possible too.
It's not the only reason, for sure. Because I think there's Knicks, and I think there's
I think with both players,
there's issues.
Elias is out right now, and JT was clearly fighting through something earlier in the season.
But I think it's really naive to think that this isn't affecting their play.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that is wishful thinking. And when coach and captain have already said that they need to deal with this and that this needs to be remedied because it's affecting the play. Like, again, these are guys in the room currently saying that. When former teammates are saying it, when longtime executives like Brian Burke are saying it, like, how many more people need to say it for you to hear it? I don't get it.
Tocchet used the word drama today.
Yeah.
Or yesterday, sorry, after the practice. What are our friends at Yellow Dog up to these days?
Well, they want to remind you it's ski season. And I certainly know that. Got my first day in finally.
You shredded some gnar?
I don't know about that. First day. Wasn't super aggressive, but make sure you grab a Yellow Dog neighborhood. Yellow Dog spirit drink from one of the many restaurants and liquor stores up at, Whistler, Silver Star, Sun Peaks, Big White, Revy, or right in their own backyard up in Penticton. Apex. I'm going to be heading to Apex in a few weeks' time. So you can bet I'll make a point of drinking some Yellow Dog in neighborhood.
Revy.
Yeah.
Okay. Where was the PM skiing?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I've been in town.
Somewhere in the interior. Yeah. Okay.
Maybe Revy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Question for you, one we haven't brought up yet. Pettersson and Quinn have the same agent, Pat Brisson.
Yep.
They have the longer rapport together with the Vancouver Canucks.
Remember when they held out together?
Well, they were without contract, Blake.
Yes.
That's not a holdout.
Okay. Remember when they didn't have a contract together? Remember when they signed on the same day together? Remember?
It was so cute. Would you be at all worried that if you move Pettersson, you risk losing Hughes?
Yeah, I think you need to work the room if you're the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
And figure out the ramifications of all of those sorts of moves.
Because the other question I have, if you move Pettersson, are you just giving JT carte blanche to treat teammates like that? Or do you think the lesson will have been learned?
I think Quinn Hughes will teach that lesson. I think Quinn Hughes is getting stronger and more emboldened by this situation. Because I think Quinn Hughes has been like, sorry, not letting inmates run the asylum here.
Well,
but I'm the best player on this team. This is my role. I think we're going to see Quinn Hughes, and he can't make them play better. I'm not saying Quinn Hughes is going to make these guys play better. They have to do that themselves. But I don't think Quinn Hughes is going to allow any further BS. That's my read on that. I think Quinn Hughes looks like a guy who's pretty much done with this.
But I think Bo Horvat was a strong captain and done with a lot of situations as well, and yet things still persisted. You can only do so much as a player, right? You don't have. You may wear the C, and that gives you some authority, but it.
I don't think Bo was willing to be a bad cop, and I think Quinn is.
All right. So, as we know, this has been a story across the national underline a hockey league with every market or many markets checking in. Stefan Rosner of the Hockey News in New York on the island has been quite busy talking about how the Canucks have interest in both Nelsons. Brock Nelson, who is, of course, a frontline forward with the New York Islanders, and Danny Nelson, who, if you didn't notice, was one of the better players at this World Junior Tournament, playing second-line center for the Americans. Bob McKenzie called him a surefire NHL player. Also mentions Noah Dobson, Simon Holmstrom. Says that Rick Tocchet likes Casey Cizikas as a bottom six forward. So we discussed this a little bit on Friday's show. Are there pieces there to consummate a deal with the New York Islanders? It seems like Elias Pettersson is the object of their affection. Go across borough into Manhattan, and Larry Brooks is wondering about a JT Miller for Mika Zibanejad trade. Both, of course, have no move protection.
Yeah, very complicated.
It is the easiest matchup in terms of
salary.
Top center, salary. Zibanejad not having a great year, and as dumpster fire as that Rangers room is right now, you also have to ask whether Mika, who has known that franchise for many years now since being traded by the Ottawa Senators, is he still a DJ, Mika? Does he still play gigs and stuff? At one point he played...
I think you're Delzatoing him, aren't you? Isn't that Delzato?
No, I thought Mika was a DJ as well.
Mika's a electronic producer.
Yeah, EDM,
Really?
right? Yeah. Oh, he played Lollapalooza, Stockholm. Okay, so yeah, who knows? I mean, like if you're into the entertainment world, New York's a pretty good place to be, right?
Both of their contracts expire the same year. JT Miller has advantage of that too, by the way.
We're getting more steam with regards to the Detroit Red Wings because for the first time maybe ever in Motown, there's heat on Steve Yzerman. The Yzer plan isn't really working. He had to fire a coach. He did so on Boxing Day. Fans in Hockeytown, USA are getting a little impatient.
Mm-hmm.
So does something need to give there with the Red Wings by way of a Pettersson or Miller acquisition? And then many were noting the fact that the baby Canucks, the Abbotsford Canucks, were in Montreal last week to play the Laval Rocket, the Canadiens farm team, and 3 different NHL GMs were at that game. Pittsburgh, Kyle Dubas, Utah, Bill Armstrong, and Boston, Don Sweeney. I mean, you can absolutely see JT Miller as a Bruin, right?
Yeah, that fits.
Utah has a pretty good cache of young assets now, young roster players and high draft picks. Is there something that, and my understanding is there's some heat on Bill Armstrong now with the new owner. It's like, okay, now it's about winning. It's not about just staying afloat and making sure the payroll is low. You're in a new market now with new owners who have an itch to win. And then Pittsburgh, Kyle Dubas, of course, JT Miller, Eastern Ohio, Western PA guy. Dare I mention 87's name here? Is that a bridge too far for you? Okay.
Yeah. The other part
he doesn't like when I talk about Sidney Crosby's imminent trade to Vancouver to bring this market a Stanley Cup as his last act as a hockey professional.
The other part of Ohio is interesting too. Is I don't know if it's 2 straight, but it's 2 overall healthy scratches for Damon Severson.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you know that they don't have? They have 2 players making over $5.5 million.
He's one of them.
He is one of them. Zach Werenski's the other one. He's not getting traded, obviously. But how is that? Like in today's day and age, 2 players making, and they're not very much above that. Severson's at 6.2 and Werenski's 9.5.
So are they a wash in cap space, or
yes.
Have they just? Oh, okay.
A wash in cap space,
right?
So
they have Monahan making 5.5 on the number, and then you're right, just the 2 guys above that. Merzlikins at 5.4. Now they've already traded a top young prospect this year, Columbus, and David Jiricek. I mean, could I see Kent Johnson? Yes. Do I see Adam Fantilli? No. Not at this early stage. He's 20 years old. He's the 2nd overall pick. Or third. Remember Anaheim took Carlson?
Yep.
But, yeah, I mean, I would leave that open. I would leave that open as a possibility. More from your guy, the captain, Quinn Hughes, to Ian McIntyre. Asked about this season. Yeah, definitely a lot more challenges, more ups and downs. For sure it wears you down, but that's like any other year. I mean, last year I can remember feeling mentally exhausted after the season. Definitely this year has a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
Don't blame him.
No.
Don't blame him.
No.
Your 2nd year as captain and you're stick handling this between 2 people who should know better. And then Tocchet spoke on this with IMAC and asked about the leadership of Quinn Hughes. He said, I'm pretty comfortable the way he is handling it right now with all the drama going on. Yeah,
the recognition is there.
you now have the anointed leaders of the team talking about it, and not just talking about it, but in one case saying, he's getting exhausted of it, and the other praising his young captain for having to deal with the drama.
And that's, again, why if the coach is getting a front row seat for how Quinn Hughes is dealing with it, I'm guessing Rick Tocchet likes the way that Quinn Hughes has been dealing with it. Again, he can't individually solve the problem. That's impossible for just Quinn Hughes to do. You need both parties to be involved, but I think Quinn Hughes is finding his voice.
I said this at the outset of all this bubbling up to the surface, but I hope a day has already happened, or that the day is forthcoming, where Quinn Hughes walks into that dressing room and just tears into both of them.
I think it's already happened
in front of the group, and
lets
them both know in front of the group that what's going on is just so wholly unprofessional and counterproductive. Mm-hmm. Dakota Joshua. This is unfortunate. He's off to IR. We'll hear from Coach here in a second. Jonathan Lekkerimaki has been recalled. Lekkerimaki has been recalled from Abbotsford. J-Pat thinks the injury to Joshua happened in the second period against Nashville after he left briefly. He's going to IR. Here's Coach Tocchet on Dakota Joshua.
Week to week, but it's not like 3 weeks type of thing. Is it a week? Is it 8 days, 9 days? I don't know, but I guess for paper, it's a week to week thing. I think the last 2-3 games, his game has started to chip away at his identity, feeling good about himself, and he hits a speed bump here, right? So use this week, to get yourself ready, because I thought the last 2-3 games is getting to his game, and we need that element.
10 days is not the end of the world,
though.
If it's 10 days he's gone, that I think you can kind of jump back into where you left off.
It's not the end of the world, but are we getting to the point where we're worried about Dakota just having a lost season here? It is 4 points in 24 games.
Well, from that standpoint, there's a bunch of guys in that category, but because it's completely unrelated and a lower body injury most likely, I'm not going to group it. That's just a freak that happened. But just in bad luck. Do you empathize with the guy? Because
of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Of course.
That's a frustrating season.
Here's what I will say, though. I was wondering about Lekkerimaki a couple weeks ago. When you knew that Pettersson and Hughes were going to be out of the lineup in conjunction, mm-hmm. That's just taken a lot of skill and offense out of your lineup. And with all the stragglers they have of guys who are just not scoring, and Joshua's on that list, of course, Nils Höglander is on that list. Boy, Suter has gone quiet here. Remember we were talking about 11-goal Pius Suter and how great he was playing. Miller. With everybody being as quiet as they were, I was looking for the Lekkerimaki card to be played a little sooner here. And frankly, again, with no offense to Dakota Joshua, he's had a difficult turn of luck here this season, no doubt. But I wonder if I'm not so sure this doesn't make them better. I think you need more offensive punch in the lineup. I think Lekkerimaki gives it to you in greater measure than Dakota Joshua right now. Last year's Dakota Joshua, different conversation. But right now, his ability to shoot the puck, the fact that he doesn't need a lot of touches to be able to either get you goals or get you high danger scoring chances, I think you're better off.
Well, they've been Ratu and Lekkerimaki have been injured here recently, so they haven't really been options to go there as the skill players. But we've seen Max Sasson add a little bit, and I think we have to put now him into that skilled category. Like, he's not PDG, and hey, PDG actually, his forecheck is he's a good forechecker. He really is, but he has to be used accordingly. It's too bad that they've not had their high-skilled guys available to them all the time from Abbotsford, but now that both of those guys, I believe Ratu's back as well now, there are options if performance and injuries continue to be an issue because they need to score goals. There's just no offense on this team right now. They need to find a way.
No goals Friday, 27 shots, but only the one in the last 11 minutes. It came 6-on-5.
Now, and that linkage with the Hughes back will certainly help, but they also need forwards to execute.
Linkage.
Yeah.
Once a term used in the CBA negotiations, you remember that?
Yes.
Gary and the owners needed linkage.
Linkage to HRR.
Yes. Whenever he came out and spoke during that dark season, it was about the linkage.
Yeah. Not sausages.
No.
Hockey-related revenue.
So Lankinen starts in Montreal, and I know Darren Dreger said on the weekend on his podcast, Ray and Dregs, that there's a level of concern. We don't talk to Dregs is coming up here. We don't ask him about Demko. In fact, shame on us. We should have. It was on my list. I'll put myself on Easonos. But look, if it goes much beyond this, you start to worry about Thatcher Demko now too, right? Back spasms.
There was comments that were positive though today or yesterday about Demko saying that he was close to being back.
But
I mean, I think
it's also hard to believe any of the comments around Demko, given the history around Demko and his injuries. Right?
Do you think that the knee was tweaked?
I think that Thatcher Demko is brittle. I think that the conversation about Thatcher Demko's injuries in the past have led people down garden paths. And so I am less confident in any of the messaging that the Vancouver Canucks give us about Thatcher Demko unless it comes straight from Thatcher Demko.
Tocchet suggested today there is a small possibility he backs up tonight.
Okay. That would be positive. Again,
So
if
he's
it's
progressed.
back spasms, and Rick even said this, usually it's a few days. Okay, he should be able to back up on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. If he's not
That's what I
backing
say.
up Wednesday.
If on Wednesday we sit here and we're talking about him not being able to back up, then a red flag raises for me.
Yeah, because then you're close to a week with back spasms.
Right. Right now it's an orange flag. Could be red.
Yeah.
By the way, Money Puck has the Canucks down at a 40% chance to make the playoffs. Utah has higher odds at this stage. And Vincent Desharnais is going home. And he's playing better. Coach says he's done a good job of blocking out the trade rumors here, that he's doing a better job of breaking the puck out of the zone, and that he's tougher in front of the net. He's praised him over his last 4 or 5 games. I know you're not a Desharnais guy, but I think you also have to acknowledge that based on where he was earlier in the year when you were looking at, oh my God, how do we get this guy off the team? Are you going to pay assets to get rid of the contract? It's been a little better over the last small sample size.
Yeah.
Fair?
Yeah, the pizzas are few and far between. And, well, I mean, I do wonder, is it just a case of there were bigger fish to fry, and so we generally sort of are just going past any mistakes? I mean, this blue line is an AHL blue line without Quinn Hughes and Roenick right now, it feels like. But, yeah, it's not, there aren't loud mistakes, so I guess we should praise that, yes.
Let's get to today's menu. It is brought to you by Greta, and we are targeting, believe it or not, Blake, our next Canucks Army watch party. We're looking at the 23rd. There's a game that night. Can't say that officially yet, but that's the date that you should probably set aside if you want to join us down at Greta, have some fun, watch hockey. Usually Quadrelli does some trivia, give away prizes. It's an awful lot of fun. Try the Smash Burger. The arcade is awesome. Greta, the place to be, 50 West Cordova. You're just steps from the arena and stadium anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Greta Bar, where the games begin. Patrick Johnston is going to join us here. Both our interviews are recorded today, and as Blake already alluded to, not asking Dreger a question I should have. I'll put myself on E's and O's. But also, it gets a little fiery with PJ. And once again, it's me fighting the masses. The handicap match
You
here.
calling us an ass? Did you fighting them asses? Is that what you said?
And look, I'm not afraid to stand against the crowd. I'm not afraid to be that little girl in the audience who says, no, the emperor has no clothes.
You should be afraid.
So
he's also afraid of
they tag team.
Not
that's
afraid
fine.
of not making any sense.
No, I made a lot of sense, Blake.
No. You'll hear, folks. You can judge.
It's all coming up. Bet365. Bets of the day. I got my under on Friday.
Did you?
Did you get your bet
ugly.
on Friday?
No, I think it was points related, wasn't I?
So you're telling me I have the honor?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the thing. Hughes may play tonight. Pettersson, not so much. They're setting the over-under at 6. So you actually have a chance for a push here with the Canucks and Canadians. I've just decided I think I'm going to go under every game until both Pettersson and Hughes are back and looking healthy, until JT looks engaged, and until Kevin Lankinen looks like there are cracks in the armor. This is a Montreal team that's played a lot better hockey. You're accustomed to seeing them right there at the bottom of the Eastern Conference and NHL overall standings. They've had a bit of a push here now. The conversation in Montreal right now is, hey, should they be looking to add for the playoffs?
They're 7-3 in their last 10.
Yeah, and they're right there in what is an incredibly close pack there in the East, chasing that final playoff
2
spot.
points back of the playoffs with 2 games in hand.
Yeah.
On the Penguins.
So they're playing better hockey. They had a rookie goaltender come in and get a shutout over Florida in his first ever NHL game. I hate betting under because you're rooting against goals and excitement and entertainment, but I'm going under 6 goals tonight. It's 3-2 league. Wise coach once said, right, Blake? It's 3-2 league.
Wow, 3-2 league. Wow. We didn't get line rushes because it was an optional today, but as we know, especially with Pettersson likely still out for this one and other injury issues, they generally deploy Connor Garland on the wing, but almost as a center. It's almost his line, if you will. All I need is one measly assist out of Connor Garland. Can you make a pass? Can you please make a pass? Connor Garland, 1 assist. Pays out a plus 150.
Break off a pass, Connor.
Break it. No, he's good at that.
Or just get the puck to net, Connor. Maybe they give you
It's actually
an assist.
Let me.
He's got 19. He's second on the team.
Let me correct my criticism. If you get a pass from Connor Garland,
Shoot the puck.
shoot the damn puck. That's probably the better, more accurate criticism to be made. So.
Connor Garland, he leads all Canucks forwards, averaging 19 minutes and 37 seconds of ice time per game this year.
So I like my
It's
chances.
extraordinary.
Yeah.
Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Patrick Johnston coming up next.
I'll be honest, I don't get to many games anymore, whether it be at the arena or the stadium. Ticket availability cost, it's a bit of an issue these days. So I prefer to go where there's atmosphere and I know I can get in. Greta Bar YVR. Soak up all the atmosphere with your fellow fans and enjoy a great night with a great street food menu. I prefer the poutine. Weekly drink specials as well at Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova. And we'll be having our viewing parties there all season long as well. Your pregame, your postgame, it's at Greta Bar YVR, 50 West Cordova. Let the games begin.
Sick Harrison Price from the Historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by Ben Moss, with a history dating back more than 100 years. Proudly Canadian-owned, operated. They've got Canadian mined diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, diamonds with payment plans to suit your needs. 5 locations here in BC: Victoria, Abbotsford, Chilliwack, Willowbrook, and Langley. Coquitlam Center. For more info, check out benmoss.com. Ben Moss, shine bright.
5 weeks till Valentine's Day. Is it too early for the early strike? Still too early for the early strike lecture?
I've stopped doing that for some time now, Blake.
Oh, okay.
Thanks for listening. But yes,
5 weeks is early.
her expectations on February 14th are sky high. Her expectations on February 12th or 13th are nil. Strike early. You can probably get away with a lesser gift.
Oh. You never really explicitly put it like that before.
No, I always put it like that. A little bit goes a longer way, February 12th and 13th.
I see.
If you're waiting till the 14th, it better be big.
Okay.
Here's Patrick Johnston of the Province and Postmedia. He covers the Canucks. How are you?
He's just blown his mind. He's never
What do
heard
you
it.
mean? You've heard this before. My preemptive Valentine's Day strike? We used to do this every year on the show.
Yeah, no, I just hadn't come in off that being lead-in.
I see.
Like,
Yeah.
wow. That's
I
hope
think
my
you
wife
should spoil
doesn't see
Candace.
this.
I think you should spoil Candace rotten. She does so much for you and your family.
Yes,
Anyways.
absolutely. Yes. Yeah, treat your lady nice.
Yeah.
That's all I
Okay.
gotta say.
We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. What do you think happens here with Pettersson and Miller? Nothing? Somebody
No.
traded? Both traded? What says you?
Thank you for. I think it's in the end. It's nothing because they committed to these guys, and these are the guys they want. But
So you think it's sustainable? You think it can be repaired?
I think. I mean, Pettersson himself said it all goes away if we start winning, and I mean, yes. Listen, if they don't start winning, then it's a different equation, isn't it? I mean, that's kind of obvious. That's a self-answering point. But
See, my question would be, can you win with Miller and Pettersson playing as they're playing right now?
No.
And
Oh,
for
no.
me, the answer is
No.
not at a level
No.
that you anticipate.
Okay, so then let's ask
Not
this
at
question.
a second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs level, and maybe not even a get to the playoffs level.
Let's ask this question then. Why are they playing like they are playing? Both of them.
I mean, it's a great question. Pettersson is, you look at those moments, like even when he was picking up the points, and we thought he was playing well. He was shooting, and his shot's mostly there. He hasn't been skating as hard or as fast as you want him to, so that's one thing. Miller, it just looks like a guy who just is completely lost at sea. I mean, let's be honest, never the goes sort of consistent defensively, but the sort of energy and FU was always there, and we haven't seen a lot of that. I mean, he obviously had listen, they got shut out against Nashville. But he was pretty good in the first half of that game. He had a breakaway and he was shooting, and these are things that were not happening. It was 3 of the previous 5 games. He didn't have a single shot attempt. That to me has been the really curious thing, is that he hasn't even been shooting. So to see him shoot against Nashville is a good thing. But they need to see him shoot against Montreal, and they, on and on. He needs to be. You go look at his statistical record, and he gets 4 or 5 shot attempts all the time. 0 has almost never happened before this sequence. The only previous 2 times he'd had no shot attempts was his game he got benched before he went on personal leave. And then the first game back against Florida, where we actually thought he had a good game, even though he didn't shoot the puck. He has not, there has just been not the energy. So if he gets the energy back, that's a good sign, because that means he's up at the opposite, or the offensive end of the ice. I mean, both of them in the end, it's about energy. I mean, Tocchet always says move your feet, right? But it's kind of true. It's just these guys.
The irony too is, for all of his hardship or that he inflicts on other members of the roster, reportedly, and his high bar for effort. Some of the little things just aren't there for him, like the coasting and the line changes. The coasting for the line change. If a player down roster did that cost them goals / games, I would guess that JT Miller would have a problem with that. Why doesn't he have a problem with it when he does it?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I think last year we had thought that they were past this, that Rick Tocchet had connected with him and was helping him channel those extraneous energies and focus them in on playing the game. Don't worry. I mean, he's as he said to me long ago, I don't play relaxed. I tried that. He can't do it. He has to play. But what that means, it has to be focused. It has to be on the task, not worrying what others are saying. He said it himself. I can't control what others do. I can only control myself. It's pretty simple.
Let coach. You play.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, and he has regressed. He has taken a step back. Do you have hopes for Pettersson getting a whole lot better? Because based on what Alvin said last week about preparation, and all of that, and based on what Elias said about his knee limited him from doing everything last summer, I mean, it just looks to me like Elias needs to get stronger and, if not faster at top end speed, at least a little more explosive. And I'm just not sure you know, can you do that in season?
In season, probably not. No. And that's the strange thing. That is the curious thing in all of this, is that as long as 2 seasons ago, he was a very fast player. Even the first half, like the data tells you this, Matt. Like I'm not arguing.
Okay.
I'm just saying, like he had explosiveness, right? I know he's an awkward-looking skater. Yes, he falls down a lot, but like he got there and he got it done. And he didn't score 100 points by accident. He is not graceful, but he gets there. And the data backs this up. He had powerful moments, and we haven't seen almost any of that this year. And that I've asked people, is he hurt? No, he's not. This is just him struggling to get to where he needs to be. And for whatever reason, the power in the skating has not been there. Now, is that because of, as he said, it set back his offseason prep? I don't know. What I do know is that Alvin said it to me. He's said it to others, that the preparation in terms of what you can do, how you can get yourself ready, it's a topic that he said before. He talked about it in general terms when he first showed up almost 3 years ago. Quinn Hughes heard it, clearly. I think Brock Boeser heard it. Brock Boeser changed the way he was preparing for the season last year. Look at the season he had. It does not make me wonder what he means when he says that. It is very clear that 2 of the young leaders on this team figured it out. And there is one that they still need to figure that out. And they believe it will take him to a level that will lead this team somewhere.
Is this looking more and more like a lost season for Dakota Joshua?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Rick Tocchet this morning, saying, I mean, not week to week, but not forever, but saying, listen, he'd been finding his way. And I thought he had been. He was having some moments. He wasn't finding those scoring chances, which was still concerning to me. But he was in on the forecheck. He'd had some shifts. There's a guy that missed training camp and obviously had a serious medical issue. That cancer treatment, no matter what it is, takes a lot out of you. And trying to come back from that is hard. And so you would have liked to see the player progress more quickly, but this is reality, right? Like, this is a guy that is coming back from a very far behind start. Listen, if he has to sit out here because it's an ankle sprain or knee sprain, I mean, I don't know what it is, but certainly that was my instinct when he got knocked in the side of the leg by Roman Josi falling into him.
Mm-hmm. And my follow-up here would be, is this a blessing in disguise? Because there were some of us who, when Pettersson and Hughes left the lineup, looked around at all the guys who were struggling, Höglander, Joshua, and others, and said, they just need goals here. And now you get Lekkerimaki in the lineup, and we know that he's a one-shot scorer, right?
Yeah, I mean, the goal he scored was beautiful, right? Like, that was a goal-scorer goal. Absolutely laser shot, and we know that if he gets the puck on his stick, he is going to shoot. He has done that already, and now it's about, can he? He saw what it was like in the fall. He saw what the NHL takes. He has been scoring in the AHL. Like, he has done what he needs to do, and we'll see now how he has progressed as an NHLer. But yeah, like, listen, I was a bit surprised he maybe hadn't been up earlier, because, like you said, they needed goals and they were lacking in some talent up there. And if Niels Höglander isn't going to be the guy, they need to find someone else.
Quinn Hughes being gone has turned this team into the most meat and the most potatoes. It is not pretty to watch.
No.
His return is imminent. How long? Let's get greedy, though. How long till Hughes and Hronek is a thing? What's your guess there? Are we talking 1 or 2 weeks till those two guys are back in the starting lineup for the Vancouver Canucks?
I'm going to say 2 weeks. Yeah, I think
but that's still not that bad. That's
I mean, they always said it was going to be late January, and 2 weeks from now will be January 20th. So, it was good to hear that he was, he's been skating, that he was seen on ice, and They need
profoundly different team when those two guys were.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself thinking a lot about like the Myers Hughes pairing worked well enough. I find myself thinking a lot about will they try to split them up, because we have seen how much that team has struggled when Hughes is not on the ice. Even when he's in the lineup, the team has struggled without him on the ice, and they need guys that can move the puck, and they just do not have that. On the roster. I mean, right now, Myers is running PP1, but is he actually the best puck mover? Is he the best passer? I mean, we were debating this question on Friday night in the press box. When Noel Juleson is in the conversation for best puck mover on your team at the moment, you know things are not good.
Given this team and what it feels like in all of our guts, and I think the fans feel this too, is it somewhat amazing the Vancouver Canucks are 18-12 and 8. Like, it feels like they are in the mud right now. Like, the floor has long been broken. Feels like they are feet in mud right now. And yet, fourth in the division, 18-12 and 8. Is that a minor miracle? I'm going to reframe what we've seen through 38 games here and say it is miraculous they are 18-12 and 8.
Well, look at I suppose it is. I mean, if you consider the fact that the record of late is loss, win, loss, loss, win, loss, 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 win, loss. Like, this is a team that's been plodding along, and there's a couple OT losses in there, but like, this is a team that's been plodding along and going, sliding on the hill, not walking, but sliding on their butt in the mud. It's remarkable they had the record they did. Like, that's what I was blown away.
Well, goaltending is a thing, right?
I'm forgive me for being Patrick Alvin end of season press conference here, but I'm getting a little uncomfortable with the laudations towards a team that is sitting on the final playoff spot.
It's stunning.
Now 7 behind the Oilers and the Kings. Now 13 behind the Vegas Golden Knights. This was a fucking Pacific Division champion team now, and you two want to lower the bar. Look at how well they're doing.
No, Matthew. I am not.
Given everything
Matthew,
that's going on, please.
Matthew. There is no laudation here.
No,
what I'm
there
saying
was a single laudation.
It's remarkable that they were even in the position they were in before they started playing like poop.
Let's
like
look
real
at,
poop.
Let's look at the other teams that have had. Let's look at the other teams that have had disappointing, like catastrophic starts to the season. The Nashville Predators. Look at where they are this season.
Undefeated in 2025. Let's be clear.
13-20-7. Look at the New York Rangers. 18-20-1. Look at the Islanders. 15-18-7.
You are not convincing me you were not lowering the bar when you start citing teams like that.
Look how much worse it could be.
Look at how much worse it could be. Let's lower the bar even further. We're not Nashville. Hang a fucking banger.
My point is, Matt, if this team can, like all those other teams I just mentioned, if they find their stride, guess where they're going? Fucking nowhere. They're going nowhere. If this team finds its stride, if this team plays better, they're fine.
Paige, I used to go home after getting disciplined at school, and it happened a fair bit. And I would say to my mom or my dad, but little Johnny did worse. And they would look at me and go, little Johnny is not our problem. Little Johnny is Johnny's mom and dad's problem. You're our fucking problem.
No. You're twisting what I'm saying into everything is fine. They're not actually that bad. No. My point is this: they are actually that bad, and look at their record.
So you think they're overachieving?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Given what we've seen, given the quality of hockey that we have seen them play, which is to say, bottom of the barrel. How on God's green earth are they 18-12 and 8?
Do you think they're overachieving too?
I don't even know. Listen, as I was saying, before they had this...
You're scared to answer the question. That's what I'm hearing now. Are they overachieving, yes or no?
Yes, they have been. It's bloody amazing.
Mike, we're packing up our mics and we're going home, okay? We're going to do our own podcast here. We're going to leave these two and the mutual admiration middle of the pack society together.
I don't know where you're getting that from. I'm saying they are playing like the worst team in the league.
They should be so much better than this.
They're overachieving. They had 109 points last year.
Given how they've played,
the Rangers were a Final Four team. The Rangers were a Final Four team.
Again,
Yeah.
I don't care about the Rangers. We don't do a New York Rangers show. We do a Vancouver Canucks show. The general manager ended last season by going, I don't know why everyone's so happy losing in round 2. We've got to get better. We've got to go further. It only gets harder. And we're like, yeah,
You're missing
they're
the point of the conversation.
aspirational,
You're missing the
finally.
point. The point of the conversation is this season is not lost. This season is not over for the Vancouver Canucks. It is for the other teams. There is something worth fighting for. There is something worth trying to figure out here because their season's not over.
And because they were the
Part I
Pacific
will
Division champions. But to this point, on how they played, Matthew, they've overachieved in results. They've not played very well. And yet here they are in the playoffs still.
Goaltending is a hell of a drug. I mean, without Kevin Lankinen, this team is
and
a lot
Quinn
better.
Hughes.
Loser points are
And
too.
Quinn
Yeah.
Hughes. And Quinn
Yeah.
Hughes.
Yeah,
No, I
Lankinen
mean, you
and
just
Hughes.
said it right
Yeah.
there. I mean, I heard it, Blake, you just said it, right? You said, you list off that Rangers record again, right? There's a team that has lost once in overtime, right? The Canucks keep going to overtime, and that's
Guys.
miserable.
Okay, but guys.
We want them
No,
to win,
no,
Matthew.
no.
The point is win the games. I don't know what point you're trying to make.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is the exercise is not to take the Vancouver Canucks in one hand and the New York Rangers in the other hand in isolation, as though they're the only two teams in the league. There are 30 other teams, and say, oh, look at the Vancouver Canucks. They're doing so much better than the New York Rangers. And the New York Rangers won the President's Trophy last year, and they're overachieving because of it. Or to take the Nashville Predators and say they were a playoff team last year. And look, they're like a bottom 5 team this year. Oh, look, the Vancouver Canucks are overachieving. No. The exercise is to take the totality of the National Hockey League, all 32 member clubs, and say, where are the Vancouver Canucks vis-a-vis that? Oh, last year
They're
they were a top
underachieving
5
then.
teams. Look at where they are this year. They're middle of the pack. They're somewhere around 60.
No, you're missing the exercise, Max. Matt. Here,
No.
we're saying you've
You're
watched
missing
these
the
games.
exercise
No,
because
Matt.
you continuously bring up one or two teams, juxtapose them, and say, "Here's the truth." No. That's not the truth. That's not all the variables.
Okay, Matt.
That's not all the
Have the Canucks?
activations.
Let me ask you this: have the Canucks played well this year? Have they played well?
No.
Right. Do they look good when you watch them?
No.
Do they look like they could be a good team when you watch them?
Yes.
Do you think so?
Ergo,
I don't
they're
think so.
underachieving.
I don't think so.
Oh, really?
I don't think they look good. I don't think they look like they're close to being a good team when I watch them. And my point is, with all of those answers that I just gave, no, they don't look good.
Well-
No, they aren't playing well. No, they don't look like they're possibly playing well. They're a playoff team right now.
You are discounting the level of talent in some of these players. Miller, Pettersson,
Ancestral.
Hoglander could be way better.
Right.
No. None of those guys have fallen off the table. Okay? JT might be regressing at his age, but I refuse to believe that these players have just flat fallen off the table. They're talented players. They're underachieving. Ergo, the team is underachieving.
They can turn it around. That's what I'm saying. They can turn it around. But I'm saying, what if you're just looking at the sample size, this is not a good team, and they're in the playoffs as we speak.
They have overachieved and underachieved at the same
again,
time, and Matt's going to be so mad that I just said that.
For me, and they're in the play. For me, the goal wasn't simply to make the playoffs.
No.
Blake Price. This isn't
Who
last
said
year.
that? No one said that, Matt. You're putting those words out there
Well,
on
no,
your
but you're
own.
lauding them for
I am
being
not
in the
lauding
friggin'
them.
playoffs.
I
holding
just,
down the
I
final.
just said they're playing like the worst team in the league. Where are you getting lauding from? There's no lauding.
And still, they're in the playoffs.
Right. That's
They're
objective.
not Nashville.
That's objective.
They're not New York.
Matt.
Oh, great. You know who else they aren't? They aren't the LA Kings. The LA Kings are getting way more out of their talent this year. The Kings are 14-2-1 at home. Lead the Vancouver Canucks by 7 points.
Have the Kings overachieved, Matt? Or tell me about that then.
You know who's playing great hockey? Hate to say it, Toronto Maple Leafs. They're having an awesome season. Both goaltenders are playing spectacularly well. They have figured out team defense. Even Brad Marchand was saying on Saturday, boy, they really figured out how to play now. You can tell they're coming together as a team. 54 points in 41 games, 4-game winning streak, lead the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers by 4 points when everybody thought, or not everybody, a number of people thought this would be the step-down season for the Leafs.
I have no idea what you're arguing at this point.
I'm talking about teams that are having good seasons and deserve our plaudits, and teams that are not having good seasons and don't deserve our plaudits, i.e., the Vancouver Canucks.
A good thing that nobody was giving them any plaudits. It's objective. They are in the playoffs right now, and they are playing like the worst team in the league. That is just an objective observation. Okay. I don't know why that's hard to grasp.
The shot share without Quinn Hughes on the ice this season has been 42%.
Yeah.
Right? So the fact that they've actually maintained the position they're at is remarkable. And should they be that bad? No, Matthew, they should not be that bad.
But that's just where they are.
Expected goals from Jay Fresh, 49.4, 20th.
Yeah.
In the
National
Hockey League.
As we were saying.
Goals saved above expected, 23rd in the National Hockey League. All of this is from Jay Fresh Hockey. It is a little dated because it doesn't account for Sunday games. Goals saved above expected, Vancouver Canucks plus 16.6, third in the NHL. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
They are a playoff team as of this second because Kevin Lankinen has made more than his fair share of saves.
Well, and as we said, when Quinn Hughes is on the ice, they are a completely different team.
So let's praise Quinn Hughes. Let's praise Kevin Lankinen. And let's understand that everything else is underachieving, and thus two players do not counterbalance all of that.
Which is exactly what we said when you were screaming.
I'm glad we have consensus. Thank you, Patrick. We'll catch up next week.
See you guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, our next guest, TSN Hockey Insider, one half of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Happy New Year, Darren Dreger. How are things?
Things are well. Happy New Year to you guys. And here I am in the historic Dreger home studio. So it kind of, I don't know, you guys, I know, Blake, you were working, and Matt, not that you weren't. I mean, we were kind of piecing through the holiday season, but it felt really disjointed. Like I felt like I'd have to start work a little bit, and then I'd stop because, wait, this is a holiday. I don't want to bother anybody. No, now we got to start again. Yep. So that as we're having this conversation here on Monday, January 6th, it feels like we can get into this new year and get going again.
Absolutely. See, the thing is, when Christmas falls on a Wednesday, it really screws up 2 different weeks, right? Because January 1st falls on a Wednesday.
Yeah. Doesn't the last Christmas party that you went to feel like 7 months ago? Though, like I was at a Christmas party on like the 21st and the 20th. That was 7 months ago.
But
I'm
some
convinced.
of them happen November now. Like you're wishing Merry Christmas in November.
But you're talking privately here, Blake, because as we know, corporate Canada, corporate world doesn't do the Christmas party.
They don't do a Christmas party.
No.
That has been crossed off the expense sheet everywhere. Okay, let's get at it. So. Neither Miller nor Pettersson has requested a trade. You have information on whether JT would be willing to waive his trade protection.
Well, look, it's more about where the process is right now. And based on the information that I've been given from that camp, from the Miller camp, is that the Canucks have not approached JT Miller with anything, any scenario to say, hey, if we can make this work, would you be willing to waive your no move clause? At last check yesterday, that hadn't happened. And look, it may happen, it may not happen, not to be loose in this, but that's the reality of the situation. As for Pettersson, a little bit more complicated. He doesn't have the same level of trade protection yet. That no move kicks in July. So the Vancouver Canucks do have a little bit more flexibility. But I think this is such an international hot potato that we just keep juggling it, right? We being the collective media and the fan base, because, it's clear that there's been a high level of inconsistency around the game the Vancouver Canucks are playing. And you can see it. You can see it on the faces of the players. You can see it on the face of Rick Tocchet, the head coach, and on it goes. So I'm not saying it's a non-story, but what I think is the reality of where we're at in the regular season also has to be checked here. And undoubtedly, Patrick Allvin and Jimmy Rutherford are having numerous conversations. I would bet that just about every team in the league has checked in on both of those players. And, there's been speculation of, okay, this team, that team, Detroit, the Islanders. Go down the list. Carolina, I know, historically has expressed interest in Pettersson, but none of that means that a deal on either side is imminent or imminent, meaning to the end of the year. And when you're talking about the players of this magnitude in Vancouver, you darn well better get what you need in return. You're talking about top two centers, right? So it's not just that top four defenseman. Now you need centers, more than one, coming back as part of this transaction. Guys, who's tearing apart their roster, the midpoint of the NHL regular season, to make this deal? Because it can't be about futures for the Vancouver Canucks. It has to be about what's happening here and now and what makes us better. So, we can talk about it all we want, but I don't think that there's any deal that's closer than it was the last time we spoke.
I've been adamant that the Canucks are going to be far better off if they solve this internally and both players stay. Like that, they are a better team with those players like that. And it sounds like they know it. Pettersson was asked about it today, adamant that he wants to stay Vancouver Canuck. That's why I signed here, and said, I'm sure it will all go away if I play better and if we win. And it's as simple as that. And they can quiet all this noise down. It's just easier said than done. They can't seem to play any better right now. And the injuries are a big part of it. No Hughes, no Pettersson for the last little while. But my goodness, does winning solve a lot of things? Yeah,
but look, the injuries eventually are going to be a non-issue. I know that Dakota Joshua is now on the list. So that's a hole in the lineup, but they've had to deal with that. They dealt with it earlier in the season, getting Pettersson and Quinn Hughes back into the mix, a healthy Thatcher Demko again. I mean, those are all just key pieces. So if these two guys can coexist and they can find a way to contribute and play the games that they're paid to play and produce as they're paid to produce, I think that the ripple effect of this is going to be ginormous. I do, because look, there's no way that this isn't a distraction inside that room. And I'm not just talking about those two guys. I'm talking about, Boeser and everybody else that has to go into every scrum and talk about it, whether they like it or not. And there's no chance that they like it. So how much of this influences the game of a Brock Boeser?
Never mind the off-ice stuff, though, Dregs. They also just know it's affecting their ability to win the hockey. Like Brock Boeser wants to win that hockey game, too, and he knows that all this noise is clearly affecting the on-ice performance of these two guys.
100%. And look, it's not like management is letting these guys off the hook either, right? There have been some good positive stories around the Vancouver Canucks. Guys who have contributed that maybe are unexpected, but you're glad to have that level of secondary scoring. Well, that's fine. That's how you win games, the tough games, and that's how you win in the playoffs. But you can't do either of those things, win games or win in the playoffs, unless your top guys are going on a consistent basis. And really, that's been the biggest issue. But it's not as simple as making a trade and making the problems go away. And I think you're bang on when you say the fix needs to be internal. It does. And it's possible that it could be fixed pretty quickly. Look, I'm glad to see and hear Pettersson take accountability and responsibility and acknowledge that this will fade if he plays the game that he needs to play. But it can't just be offensive. That's why he's earning the big bucks. But if he's going to put in the work, he's going to get better defensively, and he's going to get better and stronger physically and become a more well-rounded player. Well, maybe he doesn't have JT Miller nipping at his heels every single day. And maybe that gives fodder for some of the other experienced guys in the room to go to JT and say, hey, stop it. Stop it. You worry about your game and don't worry about his. We'll manage this collectively.
And JT's got enough worries about his game, too.
Brian Burke mentioned to our colleague Jeff Merrick on Friday, he says, looking at this from the outside in, I'm sure Rutherford, Alvin, Tocchet have had all the conversations with both of them, and that
Guaranteed.
it isn't fixed. And that it isn't fixed. This is their way of basically publicly shaming them, saying, okay, guys, you go fix it now because it's public, it's a shit show, and we've done all our best to try and fix it. Unsuccessfully thus far. That tracks for you?
100% that tracks. I mean, just think of the character that Rick Tocchet is, and then the people that he's flanked by on that coaching staff. I mean, I can envision somebody like Adam Foote dealing with this back in his day with the Colorado Avalanche in practice. Or Rick Tocchet dealing with it in practice, where you grab both helmets in the corner and smash them together and just say, stop it. Like, it's for the greater good. Look, every team goes through turmoil. Every team has internal issues that generally we in the media never learn about. We don't know about, and therefore the fan base doesn't know about it, and it doesn't become an angle or fodder for constant speculation. So enough is enough. That's really what it boils down to. And I think that tracks beautifully with the Canucks as an organization being okay with this getting out there public. But when I say enough is enough, that also applies to where we're at and the fact we're continuing to have this conversation week after week. So the message is out there. Now it's on the players to try and fix it. Because last time I checked, I can find a player on every team that would probably surprise most people as to the fact that general manager is listening on trade interest and is continually having conversations with trade interest. I don't recall a time when we're talking about players of the magnitude of Elias Pettersson and JT Miller, two guys from the same team, two, essential pieces, and visualizing the possibility of one or both of them being traded at this point in the season.
You've talked about Boeser and his contentment with what's going on here.
Before we go to Boeser, though.
No, I'm going to move on here. We're talking about Hughes. Like, this is wearing on Hughes.
I don't want to leave Miller or Pettersson.
We're all still talking about it. Patience, grasshopper.
We got a Miller Pettersson thing going on here in the studio as well, Dregs, as you make.
Patience, grasshopper.
Hey, do I need to be Rick Tocchet and bring you guys together?
You might have to.
That's where I'm going.
Helmets.
So Boeser, and I think people are watching saying, well, what's Boeser thinking of? What's Hughes thinking of all this? If you watch Rick Tochet's last couple of media availabilities, that guy looks pretty worn down too. Because I'm sure he would love to solve it in one way or the other, but he clearly doesn't have the magic touch. Like, is Coach getting worn out by all this too, do you think?
Well, I mean, it kind of looks that way. I mean, I haven't had that conversation with him, but again, I visualize the old duck analogy, right? He's trying to be calm above the surface of the water, but beneath the surface, there's a lot going on there, right? Mm-hmm. And so we only know a fraction of what, Rick Tocchet, the coaching staff and management have had to deal with to this point of the year. And then you look at the standings and you look at where the Vancouver Canucks are positioned. And I read the article that Ian McIntyre wrote in the sit down with Patrick Galvin and his layers of disappointment and all of that. And I understand that because, look, when this season started, the entire group felt like they were going to be a contending team, and they still might be a contending team. It's still early enough to say that. But I think Tocchet and the coaching staff have done an incredible job of doing things well enough to keep the group well enough together to stay in games and win some games that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise won. And Alvin is looking at it differently, and I can appreciate that. They've won games where they probably shouldn't, but they've lost games where they should have won. And I get all that. But if I'm an expiring contract like Brock Boeser, who I know has a lot of time for Rick Tocchet, there wouldn't be a player, I don't think there'd be many, I'm saying there wouldn't be a player in that room that doesn't appreciate the history and the coaching style of Rick Tocchet. But it's fair to question, well, what is his future? Rick Tocchet's, that is, with the Vancouver Canucks. And how much does that influence if you're Brock Boeser and you've engaged in negotiations with the Canucks on an extension? How much does that influence what ultimately his decision might be? And I think it does. I don't think
you'd want to know. You'd want to know.
Yeah.
Well, Tocchet's out of contract at the end of the season, but someone recently mentioned to me that's by Rick's choice. That's not a managerial thing.
Yeah. It's an optional. I know that he likes coaching. What's plan B if you're not coaching in Vancouver? Waiting for another head coaching opportunity, going back to TV. I mean, he was excellent at TNT. So I don't know. I mean, I don't think that Rick Tocchet has walked away from a challenge one time in his entire life. But maybe, again, to go back to where I started in answering the question, maybe there's a lot more that has gone into what Tocchet has had to do to keep this group together than any of us are ever going to know until that chapter of the book is written in retirement.
Yeah. Getting back to Boeser, do you think Boeser's future here pivots on Tocchet's then? That if Rick's not back, Brock may not,
I think that has an influence. I do. I think that that's a factor in it. I wouldn't say that that's, the reason he's going to stay or he's going to leave. It's a factor, and that's not unusual. I think that a lot of pending unrestricted free agents across the league would do that, especially if they've got a sense that there could be a coaching change. What are things like in the second half of the season, right? I mean, if the team is coming together and there's a better sense of cohesiveness and Brock is performing and he's putting up the numbers and all of a sudden now he likes the group again, sure, I think that he'd be open to listening. Why wouldn't he? It's a business as well. But I don't think that he is going to be in any hurry to sign on the dotted line. I think that there's an excellent chance that we're talking about Brock Boeser when the trade deadline rolls around on March 7th. I do.
To your point, all this has gone down. And the Canucks still aren't the Rangers. Like they're having a disappointing year. No. They're having a disappointing year, to be sure.
Yeah,
but they're not the Rangers. Like a 4-game win streak, which is not a crazy thing. All teams have 4-game winning streaks. A 4-game winning streak, and the Canucks are. I mean, they're probably back into the top 3 of their division with that.
Yeah, and they're not. Look, I mean, what we've already talked about at length here, the scenario of Pettersson and Miller and some of the other issues around the Vancouver Canucks, in my opinion, pale in comparison to how, say, Jake Trouba was dragged through the mud before essentially being forced out as captain of the New York Rangers. And then Kaapo Kakko, such a talented young man, okay, wasn't comfortable, didn't quite fit, but you know where I'm going. A valued asset that just gets moved and seems to be doing okay now. And there'll be other pieces that fall in New York. That's inevitable. I don't see any of that. There's going to be change. That's just the model that Jim Rutherford and Patrick Allvin will always follow. Get in early and try and get your business out of the way well in advance of the deadline. And look, again, if Miller and Pettersson settle down and things start coming together there, that doesn't mean like that Allvin and the Canucks are going to stand pat. They still need that defenseman, and they still need a forward. So I'm sure there are multiple conversations of adding in other areas that we're not even considering at this point.
Yeah. Speaking of the Rangers, there was a report last week that Miller would waive to go to the Rangers, and many people are connecting the two teams in part because of the dysfunction going on with the Rangers. And Mika Zibanejad coming back to Vancouver to play with his fellow Swede, Elias Pettersson.
Yeah.
You told us that the Canucks have not approached JT about waiving, but what's your sense? Is there a fit to be had there between those two players?
Well, I mean, from Miller's standpoint, I'm sure the New York Rangers would have interest. There's history there. He's the type of player that every team in the league, when he's clicking, wants to have. No doubt about that. But at the time of the report, I was told by someone close to the Miller camp that no, there's nothing to it. Vancouver is not approached. It's not about one team. And unless they approach, how can it be about one team? Right? I mean, he's got the full no move clause, so there's no point really engaging in deep trade conversations unless you know there's a willingness from that player to eventually participate. And as of that conversation, that hadn't happened.
Do you think he's dinged?
And Zibanejad, sorry.
Go.
Zibanejad's full move too.
Yeah.
Drugs. Do you know anything there?
No, not as firm. Not as firm. And I don't want to have you read into that to say that, he's been presented, they've gone to him, there's some wiggle room in any of that. The sense that I was given by someone close is that it is unlikely that he would waive to go to Vancouver. But in saying that, if that's the case, he may not waive to go anywhere. I mean, that's the thing about New York, right? Those players they're not loving the way this season has unfolded, or in certain cases, how players have been treated. They love New York and they love Manhattan and they love everything about being a New York Ranger, aside from the dark side of what's gone on this year.
Just last on Miller, do you think he's injured? Like his 5-on-5 play has just been absent completely this season.
I wonder.
I mean, to what do we? He's managing to keep almost a point per game via special teams and such. But I mean, his inability to score goals and just, I mean, there's no loud shifts like we normally see out of JT Miller.
Right.
I mean, everybody's dinged. I should go further than that. Do you think he's dealing with something here?
Well, all I know is, that was part of what contributed to his decision to take the leave of absence, right? It was a number of things, and the majority of them were personal and none of our business, quite frankly. But, included in the explanation to me at the time when the Canucks granted the leave of absence was that he did have something physical that was nagging and was bothering him. And look, Toronto's gone through something similar with Austin Matthews. You don't know how tough these players are and you don't even need to know the specifics, but the fact that they're playing through something on a shift by shift basis. So I don't have the information to verify that JT is playing through something. I wouldn't be surprised to learn that, though. Because I would tend to agree. It's in his DNA to play the game the way he plays the game, and we're not seeing it
for sure. And you're just not seeing that. No, absolutely. Okay, so to recap here, if
we need graphics, get the graphics.
If Miller was willing to move or to waive, that's a pretty easy trade for the Vancouver Canucks to make, given the interest out there. Pettersson, given the salary being where it is and the fact that someone would have to remodel their team for him, that's a more difficult one to make in season.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. But I don't doubt for a second that there are teams around the league that have sharp pencils and are pushing numbers around trying to figure out how they could make that work. I mean, if it turns out that Elias Pettersson is an elite level talent and is proving that with his level of production a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, you're going to look back at that deal at 8 years at $11.6 million and go, yeah, he was worth it. And I think that's part of the pause that the Vancouver Canucks have to take into consideration as well. It's a tough deal to make right now, certainly from a mathematics perspective on Pettersson. Difficult from JT Miller's standpoint because, there's money involved as well. But he's such an important piece that you're going to have to tear up your roster to some degree to give the Vancouver Canucks the pieces that they need. And that's assuming that they go to Miller and he goes, I'll accept that. I think we're a long way away from that.
Yeah, well, and the other thing they have to consider with Elias is a 26-year-old two-way centerman. Get that trade. There's a lot of fans here who think they couldn't win an Elias Pettersson trade. Drex, do you think they could win or make a fair trade for Pettersson in this environment?
In season, I think it'd be a real challenge. I would bet that they don't win in season, and history has shown if you can afford to be patient, and I do think the Canucks can afford to be patient, you get to the off season and things open up. Just do it before July 1st.
Yeah,
yes,
of course.
Yes,
absolutely. Marvelous stuff, sir.
Okay, guys.
We'll reconvene next Monday, and we'll have a whole bunch of more hypothetical questions to ask you on Miller and Pettersson.
Just going to say, I wonder what we'll talk about.
That's how this works.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Sick Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center, where if you have your tickets for the big game, why not make it a full experience? Stay downtown at the Wall. Call 604-331-1000. Ask for the Sick Harrison Price exclusive rates. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text the show, 778-402-9680. Email live at sickharrisonprice.com. All of it to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
Ryan Rigmaiden has swung his first big trade as BC Lions general manager. They have acquired Toronto Argonauts offensive lineman Dejan Allen for Canadian linebacker Ryder Varga and a second-round pick in 2026. Allen has been an all-CFL selection the last 2 years and an East Division All-Star 3 successive years. He's also won 2 Grey Cups in a brief period of time. In the double blue, 63 regular season games. He has played both left and right tackle. Reg Maiden tells me he's going to play right tackle in BC. Jarrell Broxton is still under contract, their left tackle, who's been good. 2023 season, he was the CFL Offensive Lineman of the Year. Allowed a league-low 11 quarterback pressures out of 499 pass blocking situations. So that's really good. And Rick Maiden further tells me that linebacker is an open competition now at both spots, and he wants more physicality there. And it was hard not to watch the Lions last year and go, boy, like they just need to step up physically. More tackles need to be made closer to
so many broken tackles.
Line of scrimmage.
Oh.
So, look, Vernon's Ben Halatic has been a good player, but if you're going to start a Canadian linebacker, you need depth. Varga's out the door now. Lacumbo and Messam, 2 other Canadian linebackers, are free agents. Patrice Vernet played some outside linebacker, but he doesn't really fit in the middle. And, I think they like some of the American options they have there, guys who stepped up last season. So we'll see. There was also a report on the weekend that the Lions were nearing a deal with wide receiver Trey Odoms-Dukes of Calgary. But it sounds like he spurned them at the last minute, signed with Edmonton. He had 60 catches last year for the Stamps, nearly 700 yards. South of the border.
Oh, boy.
The Seattle Seahawks finished their 2024 season with a victory against the rival LA Rams in Los Angeles. They were one of 15 teams in the NFL to win 10 games this year, and the only one to miss the playoffs. And you had to go deep down the tiebreaker list for them to miss the playoffs in the head-to-head against LA. What's the other stat you told me you heard? That
only a handful of teams in the history of the league have had back-to-back winning seasons, missing the playoffs in both of those years.
Yeah.
Like, it's one thing to get spurned like the Canucks or like the Seahawks did this year, winning record. Okay, you're the one team. Basically, it's happened to them 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
So
today they fired offensive coordinator Ryan Grubb. He had come from the University of Washington, where he had a big hand in Michael Penix's season and their run to the national championship game. The name Doug Pettersson is being thrown around now. The former head coach and just fired in Jacksonville, of course, won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles. Bellingham born, raised in Ferndale, so he's a local guy. I'm not sure if he's quite ready to just be an OC, if he has any other head coaching aspirations. You also have to wonder whether a young defensive-minded head coach would want to bring that profile of assistant onto the staff should things not go well. There's a ready-made in-house replacement. And it does sound like Tyler Lockett is done as a Seahawk after 10 years, where he was a marvelous player, 3 times won their Steve Largent Award. He took to the podium yesterday and started campaigning for raises for the equipment and training staff. So good on you, Tyler.
I think Wally Buono rule applies there. Marvelous career.
Yeah.
He's given you everything.
Yeah.
But it's time to get out.
Get out a year early
Yeah.
rather than a year late, and that probably means they're going to be looking for another receiver in the offseason, either via the draft or a free agency. John Schneider on the pregame show yesterday, their GM, talking more about fixing the offensive line via the draft than via the free agent class. We shall see. And, I got to say, I didn't have huge expectations for Geno Smith. He has given them a couple of terrific seasons. I know he's made too many mistakes in the red zone and at critical moments. My opinion of Geno was always he may be good enough to win you games, get you in the playoffs, and have fun seasons. And I think for the most part, this was a fun season for the Seahawks. There were some maddening moments, to be sure, but I think for the most part, you can feel like this was a decent season for the Seahawks. I just don't think he's good enough to win you a Super Bowl.
So, with that in mind,
Right.
do you move heaven or earth or both
Yeah.
to get one of J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold?
Well, we'll see if Darnold gets re-signed by Minnesota. Needless to say, if they re-sign Darnold, I suspect they'll listen on JJ, but they may look at it like we want 2 quarterbacks going forward. Who knows? You got the 18th overall pick. Of course, McDonald was a defensive coordinator at Michigan a couple of years ago, so he would know JJ. I'm not the biggest JJ McCarthy fan. I also think I'm given Arnold had an incredible season. Watched the game a week ago where he was against Green Bay, where he's making every throw in the book, and I'm just sitting there going, okay, like he's has to win me over now. How can I still have qualms about Sam Darnold?
And then last night,
and then he goes and has the game he had last night.
Yeah.
So
that's what I'm saying. Like
you don't touch Kirk Cousins, though, right? If you're Seattle,
no. I love the cockroach. He refuses to die, but I don't.
Quite a nickname.
I don't think you sign him.
Yeah. Unpopular opinion. That was a terrific World Junior Hockey Championships. And I know it loses a lot of luster when Canada doesn't advance past the quarterfinals. And needless to say, if Canada was in the gold medal game, we'd be spending a fair bit of time on that on today's program. But that medal round was terrific entertainment.
Yeah.
The gold medal game last night in overtime, USA comes back from 2 goals down to beat the Finns in OT, winning a second straight gold medal at this tournament, something they had never done. The Czechia-Sweden bronze medal game into a 14th shootout round. The Finland-Sweden semi on Saturday was awesome stuff. Also settled in overtime.
The only thing missing was Canadian success.
Really?
Otherwise,
That's
it would have been a perfect
my
tournament
goodness.
because the parity in the group play was spectacular as well. Even the teams that really didn't show well in the win column, like Germany, competitive. Like there was a reason for them to take to the ice every game.
For sure. Latvia, my goodness. I mean, Latvia put a scare in the quarterfinals. Latvia was right there with Sweden.
Yeah.
And look, the Czechs win a medal for a 3rd consecutive year. It is terrific to see them back on the international hockey scene as a contender, not just filling out group play. Sweden, the curse continues at this tournament. Finland, after a couple of dry years, comes back. And that was an awesome tournament for Finland because that was not close to being their most talented team at this thing. And yet there they were. Scott Salmon of Hockey Canada did come out 2 days later. I'm sure they saw the temperature of what was going on across the country and went, we better show more contrition, humility, and promise changes because our initial post-mort of the loss to the Czechs in this tournament didn't seem to be satisfying for the Canadian public. So he says changes are in store. Jeff Merrick told us he thinks they're going to start getting younger at key decision-making positions in the composition of that staff and team. Our buddy Dave Hall on Canucks prospects for Canucks Army. Tom Wielander wraps up the juniors as the 2nd most utilized player, logged more than 170 minutes of ice time. He's also 4th amongst defensemen in scoring with 5 points, 2nd in shots with 27. And remember, this isn't a big offensive guy, and yet he was running their power play. Sadly, he took a soft penalty against Finland.
Soft, though. I mean, what do you say?
Well, when you grab with the open hand a second time, that is usually going to get called in international
It felt like a
hockey.
feel. It felt like a grope more than a grab.
When you take the hand off the stick and you go to grab the first, you can get away with that. But when you do it the second time, typically, you're going to catch an official's attention. But Dave says his stock definitely solid gains here. And should also mention that Canucks prospect Sawyer Minio of Canada, who started as the spare defenseman, worked his way in the lineup after the injury to Matthew Schaefer. He has been traded in the WHL. He is going from Seattle to Calgary for like 87 draft picks and 4 players. That's how WHL trades work. No?
He still didn't play a ton, so I don't think his stock necessarily went up, but it didn't go down either. Really.
Yeah, fair. Surrey Mitsubishi poll question results from Friday. We asked you if the Rangers make a fair offer for JT Miller, should the Canucks accept it? 2,700 votes here. What did the people say?
people said yes.
They did. Percentage?
It'd be slim, I would guess. 54.
70.
What? Really?
Logan, a fair offer for JT starts with Trocheck and Schneider, and the Rangers would be dumb to add Schneider to that. Cordelia, no bloody way. He's the kind of guy you need come playoffs. Lose him, and once again, we're, quote, easy to play against. Agent provocateur. Yes, because it's apparently either him or Pettersson at this point, and Petey has 6 more prime and serviceable years in comparison to JT. Hate to see him go, but this dysfunctional team dynamic can't continue. Hockey, I want them both gone. EP40 won't be able to handle the pressure after Miller's gone. Yeah, we're going to talk more and more about that if it comes to pass, right? The survivor here.
Well, but
and what they would be facing.
It's not his team. It's Quinn Hughes' team. So I think he still has that shield, does EP, if he ends up being the only guy left.
And Andy says, I'd accept a fair offer for anybody on this team. Yeah, we've heard a little bit of this too. I just hate this team. I hate the personalities. I hate the immaturity.
Well, I mean, we've said this before, but I think it's even more apparent now because of the injuries and guys being out of the lineup. But there's just not a lot of personality on this team. There's not a lot of swagger. And for a team that,
well,
what's that?
Not this year. You're right.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, last year in the playoffs was a completely different beast. Right now, there's this team. There's not much there.
Mm-hmm. Errors and omissions. I'm on the list 3 times. I had a bad Friday. First of all, Carson Rakoff and Porter Martone play for Brampton, not Mississauga in the OHL.
Very different places. Pretty much the same place.
Yeah. JPAC corrected me on a technicality. JT Miller has beaten a goaltender from October in a shootout, not in the run of play.
Sneaky.
And Boeser did wear an A. I missed that in the absence of Hughes and Pettersson. Anything to self-report?
Nothing yet.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time connecting with us. Please do subscribe to all our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. We're live on many of those platforms, noon Pacific time weekdays. And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.